Spiritual infidelity sounds shocking, right? Like you're doing something wrong on your spiritual journey. But hear me out. Being unfaithful isn't about betrayal or cheating. It's about giving yourself the freedom to explore beyond one spiritual tradition, teacher, or practice. It's about letting go of the idea that there's only one right way to spirituality. Your ego, especially your spiritual ego, will hate this because it craves certainty and external validation. But that's exactly why embracing spiritual infidelity can lead to a deeper, more authentic awakening. Let me share with you a personal story to explain this. Years ago, I made a career switch from being an accountant to an animator. But just 3 months in, I had this gut feeling it wasn't the right fit for me. I knew my friends and family were going to have a lot of questions like, why are you giving out so soon? What's making you want to quit? Or what are you going to do next? So I decided to explain everything in a blog post. Well, that post blew up. It started getting traffic from Google, but not all of it was positive. Other animators came to my website calling me a quitter and telling me that I was being disrespectful to the craft. They were defending the animation industry. So some even get personal, like making remarks about me being Asian, asking me how I could even think about being a writer. It got so intense that I have to take the post down. So why am I telling you all this? Because it made me realize something important. People's identity are often tied to their work. For animators, their role isn't just a job, it's who they are. My post wasn't an attack on animation itself. I love watching animated films like those by Pixar. I was just saying animator wasn't the right job for me, it wasn't a right fit, but they took it as a personal attack. This isn't just about animators, by the way. It happens in spiritual communities too. Have you ever seen someone get really upset if their spiritual teacher is criticized or if their chosen spiritual path is questioned? For example, if someone says, yeah, the law of attraction doesn't work, twin flame unreal, or non-duality is nonsense, it's like they take it personally, as if it's an attack on them. And that's usually because their identity is tied to that practice, teacher, or belief. You see, when we become too attached to these things, it can actually hold us back. The ego loves to cling on to labels, beliefs, and identities and build stories around them. When our ego builds stories around what we should do or how we should act as a spiritual person, it creates the spiritual ego. Spiritual ego is essentially your regular ego disguised in spirituality's clothing. It can be a little tricky to identify because it often hides behind the labels of enlightenment, good intention, and higher consciousness. But if you find yourself feeling defensive and agitated when someone is criticizing your spiritual path or beliefs, it might be a sign that your ego has attached itself to your spiritual knowledge. True spiritual growth requires us to question everything, even our most cherished belief. You don't want to believe everything that your religion or spiritual teacher tell you at face value. You want to check what they say with your own experiences and see if it resonates with your soul and your intuition. But that's also where the idea of spiritual infidelity comes in. If you have been practicing mindfulness for a while, why not explore something new like New Age spirituality to spark fresh idea and inspiration? Or if you are into New Age practices, ground yourself in mindfulness could help bring balance and clarity. Trying out new approaches keeps your mind flexible. It broadens your perspective and opens the doors to deeper spiritual growth. It's really about letting go of the need to cling to a fixed spiritual identity. Like for me, I started with learning about the law of attraction and manifestation, pretty basic foundational stuff. Then after my spiritual awakening, I got into mindfulness and meditation. I started reading books on Taoism like the Tao Te Ching, diving into Buddhism, and even exploring works by Catholic authors like Henry Nouwen. Along the way, I also gained a deeper understanding of energy healing and the law of attraction. But over time, my journey continued to expand. My psychic abilities started developing, and I became more connected to new age practices, things like angels, spirit guides, and the afterlife. My spiritual identity and knowledge kept expanding and evolving. But here's the thing, the mind loves routine. It gets comfortable following a fixed linear path. Over time, that path becomes part of your identity. Your ego latches onto it, weaving stories and beliefs that feel safe and familiar. And that becomes your spiritual ego. But when you introduce a different perspective, it can cause some internal conflicts for your mind. It creates cognitive dissonance. And the ego absolutely hates contradiction. It wants to defend and cling to the old belief, to explain and prove them right, because that structure, the story we tell ourselves, are what hold our sense of identity together. Without it, your ego might experience some kind of death. And that's why it feels a need to protect and defend any threats to the narrative. And that's why we feel agitated when someone criticizes what we believe in. But stepping outside of the comfort zone is where real growth happens. Spirituality isn't black and white, it's kind of gray. We are just all sharing our version of the truth, one version of a universal truth. But it's not necessarily the whole truth, it's just one aspect of the truth. It's incomplete. Spirituality can be told in so many different ways. We can be saying the same thing but from very different angles. And words are pretty limiting. As someone who has written 7 books, have seen this firsthand. The same book that I've written can mean different things to different people. And even the same person reading it at different times in their life can see it differently. Exploring different spiritual perspectives makes you think bigger. It challenges you to see things from a more holistic point of view. Take suffering, for example. Christianity might view it as a result of a sin or a test of faith. Buddhism, on the other hand, sees suffering as a reality of existence. It's just what you have to deal with as human, and it's caused by our attachment to impermanent things. So how do you reconcile that? Which perspective do you lean towards? Or maybe can both coexist? Ultimately, you have to decide what makes sense to you, and that's a good thing. It stops you from falling into dogma or blindly following one path. Instead, you can take in wisdom from different teachings, integrate what resonates with you, and create your own understanding. But you see, the role of a student isn't just to sit back, absorb information, and then move on. It's about understanding, applying, asking questions, and really thinking for yourself. When I used to be a tutor, I have students who would just repeat whatever their teacher said, like Mr. So and so said this, so it must be true. If what you taught didn't perfectly fit into their rigid structure their teacher gave them, they would think that you're wrong. But being a student is about more than just following instructions. It's about checking in with yourself to see if something makes sense to you. Even as a tutor, I will make mistakes, right? Sometimes my mind and mouth are fully in sync and I'll say the wrong thing without meaning to. That's why I love when students call me out. It shows that they are paying attention and trying to truly understand and not just passively taking everything in. The truth is, all of us are both students and teachers when it comes to spirituality. We constantly are learning from others and sharing what we have learned, and questioning things is a huge part of growth. It helps us loosen our grip on rigid spiritual identities or beliefs. But of course, there's a balance. You don't want to fall into this trap of being skeptical about everything. It's like, I don't believe this, I don't believe that, spirituality is all just nonsense. That's a closed-minded approach that leaves no room for learning. It's like rejecting every idea because you think you already know it all. Sometimes things just don't have a perfect logical explanation. They just are. And if you're open, you can start to gain meaningful insights. I've been there myself too. Before 2023, I was quick to dismiss the concept of twin flame. I thought it was just some kind of romantic obsession or some fantasy designed to fit our ideas about soulmates. I didn't even bother to learn about it, I just wrote it off. But when I started writing about spiritual awakening, I kept coming across the topic of twin flame. Eventually, I began to see connection between twin flames and spiritual growth, and it gave me a new perspective. Now I see how it ties into my own spiritual journey. Sure, there are a lot of fluff out there about twin flame focused only on romance and or getting the guy or gal that you desire. But if you dig deeper, there are some really profound teachings on the topics that goes far beyond the surface level point of view. That's why it's so important to keep exploring, even if it means stepping outside of a single spiritual path, teacher, or resource. The more variety you expose yourself to, the more your mind will experience cognitive dissonance. It will push you to let go of rigid belief and see things from a much broader perspective. It's about developing your own understanding rather than just sticking to what someone else told you. But that's not all. Spiritual infidelity can also prevent the development of a collective spiritual ego. You see, when people are stuck in a community with rigid or strict belief system, they feel pressured to stick with the group and reject others' point of view. There's an unspoken peer pressure to meet the community's expectation to feel validated and accepted. This can cause separation, superiority, and judgment towards anyone on a different spiritual path. By embracing spiritual diversity and staying open minded, we can create deeper connection, more acceptance across different spiritual practices, and even strengthen our own connection with our inner self. So don't be afraid to question your beliefs, stay curious, and explore multiple spiritual paths at the same time. If you're wondering where to start, I have found 7 main types of spirituality you can dive into. Watch my next video to see which one resonates with you.